Hello everyone, welcome back to Gill Technologies. I'm George Gill and this is
Carol.
And we'd like to talk to you a little bit more about Telewatch and the management software and how it can help your business. Now today we're going to talk a little bit about what, Carol?
We're going to talk about the calendar year-to-date report and why you should look at that and what information you can get at a quick glance in Telewatch.
Okay, now tell me the number one thing that you hear from clients that they like about the calendar year-to-date report. What's their big benefit that they're getting when they look at that report?
It's 2 years information at a glance. It's a really easy way to see what goes on within your business on a seasonal kind of a routine. Lets you look at last year compared to this year, lets you look at the current months and the trends that are happening within your company. And also you can see changes in the way your business is operating with their mobile devices.
So maybe if a company's struggling with budgeting or forecasting, or they're just kind of going like this and seeing what happens, or maybe it's all about winning, I guess, is the big tagline today by Charlie Sheen. Huh? Okay, maybe it's about that. I don't know. But by looking at the year-to-date, we can see the whole effect, essentially, and we can compare it to previous years to see exactly what's going on.
Absolutely.
Now, there's some pretty significant details in the year-to-date report that you like to drill into, isn't there?
There's a couple of really quick indicators that can be very valuable with the cost per minute and the cost per unit figures that are displayed there, and it's a really easy way to see if your usage is going up, what it's doing to the overall cost on a company level. If your cost per minute seems to be increasing, then some plans probably need to be changed. There's some users that are using more than what their plan allows, and they're getting heavy out-of-bucket charges or charges for features that need to be added. They're texting, they're using new features that are not already covered in their plan. So it's a really quick way to figure out what changes might need to be done.
Okay, now you mentioned the cost per unit. Is there a benefit if I have, say, 400 phones in our fleet, that if I know the average cost per unit is, say, $82, and I can then quickly look at users that are maybe excess of 100 and be able to drill into them from that perspective?
Absolutely. With the quick look at that cost per unit, then you can navigate to some other reports within Telewatch to look at some of your specific users, and you can use that as a guideline to say, where are my top users? How many of them are above that dollar figure that perhaps need to be addressed in some way?
Okay, so if your company has a significant amount of cell phones, say 25 plus, and you're trying to do some budgeting and forecasting and definitely maybe in the reactive mode instead of the proactive mode, sounds like the calendar year-to-date report might be able to help your business manage better and certainly forecast a lot better, as well as put better controls in place to control those costs. But let's go on over now to Carol's computer and take a look at the calendar year-to-date report, and maybe you can give us some examples of those specifics. Sound good?
Absolutely. That's great.
All right.
Here we are in Telewatch, and there are two ways for us to get to the calendar year-to-date report. First is simply click here, calendar year-to-date, or we can click on Reports, Mobile section, and calendar year-to-date report summary. Now, I love the calendar year-to-date report. It is a great way for us to get a really good idea of what's going on in the account all in one shot. The first thing we can see is trends. We can see what's going on across the account over the entire year. We can see any significant changes in total usage. We can see changes in costing. We can see changes in long distance or roaming charges. We get a quick view of some average numbers for each of them. And we get to see cost per minute, cost per unit figures. We'll go through each of those a little bit more right now. Now, the usage allows you to see what the total minutes are. It gives you a breakdown of daytime, evening, weekend, any other types of minutes that might be used across your account, as well as a total. And this lets us see any kind of trends, follow our busy seasons, and if we know that May is one of our busiest months, we can see here that it has 60,000 minutes. That's a lot more than the rest of the months. If for some reason we know that May is our busiest month and yet the usage is only 30,000 minutes, then maybe that would set off some alarm bells and give you something to look a little further into to try to understand why, even though you know it's a busy season, suddenly your usage is lower. Similarly, we can track trends in the data usage, cost for that data, And long distance and roaming charges. One of the things I like about the roaming charges is it lets us see very quickly what's going on. If we know that there is a specific event, perhaps a conference that several employees go to every year, we can see the charges for their roaming, and we can try to be proactive perhaps in future years and make a little bit of an effort to add applicable roaming bundles or travel packs to try to reduce some of those costs. The averages that we get to see very quickly let us see what is going on a per unit kind of basis. Lets us know that if we're on a 450-minute plan and our units are only using 200 minutes a month, maybe we can reduce the plan size, try to save some money that way. Conversely, if they're on a 250-minute plan and these averages are all averaging over 450 minutes, then perhaps there is a larger plan that would prevent as many overage charges on a given month. The cost per minute and cost per unit figures simply take, in the case of cost per minute, total cost divided by the total minutes. And what this gives us is a really quick view of what the actual cost of a minute of usage is in any given month. And generally speaking, with making changes to your plan and trying to accommodate usage better, these figures should continue to drop. Oftentimes carriers will come out with new plans that might reduce charges. In this particular case, I know that a significant change was made in the month of May to a brand new pooling plan, and as we can see that significantly reduced the cost per minute throughout the rest of the year. Similarly, cost per unit takes the number of units, total cost divided by the number of units, and we see that again, with that change made in the month of May, the cost per unit has significantly dropped each month after that. Now, the cost per minute generally can reach sort of a low, and then if the cost per minute figure keeps going down, then that's a good thing. If it starts to increase, then we need to start looking at what might be happening. Either it's a significant increase in the total cost, or it's a significant decrease in the minutes used. A lot of times that may be justified. It's, holiday season and not as many minutes were being used at that given time, or the significant increase in cost could be a result of more roaming charges or long distance charges, something else anomalous on the bill that perhaps needs looking into. The cost per unit figure, if it changes, is generally because there's a significant increase in cost or a reduction in the number of units. So if you cancel 7 units that were not active anyway, then there's a chance that your cost per unit would go up because the inactive units would generally be cheaper, and now suddenly those cheaper units aren't there to offset the cost per unit on some of the more expensive units. So that can affect it in the wrong way. And just reach a plateau, and that'll become a new plateau, and any reduction would come off based on any new savings that were found at that point. Now, the other thing I love about this report is that it gives us the ability to compare this year to last year. It lets companies who have seasonal type functions, whether your busiest season is March of every year, or perhaps you're a summer business and your busiest months are July, August, and September, you can very quickly look and see this year, scroll down, and do a comparison to last year. And at the bottom of each of these months, we have an actual calculation of the change, the percent of change comparing to the previous year. Obviously, what we want to see happening in all of these cases is that we want to see these numbers apart from total minutes, because if total minutes is increasing, generally that means that your business is expanding or growing, you're using more. But for the costs, whether it's cost of data, the total cost, cost per minute, or cost per unit, we want to see these numbers continuing to decrease. Anytime where there's an increase in one of these numbers, it's well worth looking into further, checking your bill, trying to see what specifically is going on. In this case, there's a 30% increase in the cost per unit. If we scroll up, we can see that we had 96 units. 91 units this year, so we can very quickly see that first thing we have is less units. Second thing we have is increased costs on this particular month. Looks like it's largely due to roaming charges. We have $1,950 in roaming charges here. We have $189 in roaming charges here. That will significantly impact the cost per unit and cost per minute on a given month, and probably explains why the cost per unit is up here. Cost per minute is roughly the same. So it's a great indicator of when to look for something that has changed on the account, or a possibility for some savings to be made on an account. Obviously, if these numbers start getting into the positive as the year continues to progress, then something needs to be looked at on the account, and perhaps some significant changes need to be made to try to find a plan that better suits the usage of the account at that given time. The other thing to look at on the calendar year-to-date report are the year-to-date totals. At this point, it lets you see any usage up to this point in the current year. And very quickly you can scroll down and compare to your total usage of the year before. We get some totals of the change between this year and last year, and we get to see these percent change this year to last year. So again, in this case, we're sitting in pretty good shape while the total usage is down. We also see that cost is down quite significantly, cost per minute is down quite significantly, cost per unit is down quite significantly. At this point, it appears that this account is in quite good standing. I hope that this explains the calendar year-to-date report. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them below, and we'll be happy to get back to you as soon as possible.